appreciate that very much, I'm sure.
All right. Thank you. And I look forward very much to working with you on that, Tom. I'm going to go to Senator Johnson.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
then
Chairman.
yield to Senator Chiesa.
Let me just give a couple stats that Senator Coburn was just talking about. Aspen Institute task force organized by that organization said that Department of Defense, which has a budget 10 times the size of Department of Homeland Security, reports to 36 committees. Department of Homeland Security reports to over 100. And in the 112th Congress, there were 289 formal hearings. So I think the first thing we ought to do is look inward and say, what does Congress need to do to become far more effective and efficient in our oversight capability? Let me start out, first of all, by thanking both of you for being willing to serve. In my short time here in Congress, I am always impressed. I'm heartened by the fact I'm impressed by the quality of the individuals that are willing to serve their nation when I realize there are far more lucrative things you can be doing with your career. So I truly appreciate that. And Ms. Spaulding, you talked about the essential mission of department, and I agree with that. And in order to actually accomplish that essential mission, the department also has to be, very efficient and effective, which by and large is not an attribute that we apply to government. I've certainly learned in my business career that the maximum point of managerial influence is at the point of hiring. I want to expand a little bit on what Senator Coburn talked about, the oversight capability, understanding how inefficient it is, but also how critical it is. I'm a novice when it comes to oversight compared to Dr. Coburn, but one area, and by the way, from my standpoint, you never know what area you're going to be asked and really asked to look at in terms of oversight. In my case, with my former subcommittee, it started with the hearing on Cartagena. Something as a business person, if we had that kind of problem in my business, I'd have got to the bottom of that in a week. It's been a year and a half, and I still have all kinds of unanswered questions. And as we've gone down that rabbit hole trying to figure out what happened in Cartagena and looking at internal investigations and reports of investigations by not only the Secret Service, but then the Office of the Inspector General, there are many troubling aspects. So I guess, first of all, Mr. Bunnell, I'd like to ask you, what do you believe is the role of the Department of Homeland Security General Counsel in relation to the Inspector General?
Well, I will start by saying that as a former Federal prosecutor, I spent a lot of time working with Inspector General offices, and I understand the importance not only of their role as sort of one of the, it's kind of a three-legged stool of oversight. There's direct oversight from the committee, there's GAO, and there's the IG. And I think those three things are working well together. You get a powerful engine of oversight. And an element of that for the IG is they need to be independent, and they need to have credibility, and they need to come in and ask hard questions of people that they don't otherwise have to please in their day-to-day lives. So the relationship needs to be collaborative and cooperative, but in some ways arm's length, because there needs to be some independence there. I would see the General Counsel Office's role really being on the prevention of waste, fraud, and abuse, primarily, and it's trying to make sure that your processes and procedures reduce risk. And then if there's a specific instance, an allegation that some wrongdoing has occurred, I would assume that would normally go in the first instance to the IG for their investigation. And the IG would have to work with the OGC folks would have to work with the IG to make sure the IG is getting everything they need.
Let's say there's hypothetical a specific investigation being undertaken by the Inspector General. Would the Department of Homeland Security General Counsel have any role in terms of advice in that type of investigation?
Well, I think my understanding is that the Inspector General has his own counsel, her own counsel, and that person is independent, doesn't report to the General Counsel. But we would certainly be available, and I assume would often be, we being OGC, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, the expertise of the General Counsel's office would certainly be available to the IG if they want to understand the way statute has been interpreted, and they need to drill into a specialized area.
Yeah, I'm not an attorney, but I think the Inspector General Act of 2008 states that the IG shall obtain legal advice from a counsel either reporting directly to the Inspector General or another Inspector General.
Right.
So I guess the question I'm asking, should the General Counsel of the Department of Homeland Security have any contact with the Inspector General during, any particular report, or should it be totally separate?
Well, I don't think a total wall of separation would normally be necessary. I think there's a lot of value in making sure that the Inspector General has an enormous challenge when they have a specific case. The agents working on that case need to come up to speed on the intricacies of a particular operational area, particular authorities, and if they have questions or they have requests to be briefed on something, I mean, it strikes me as a good idea to have the General Counsel do that, so it's done right and it's done quickly, so they don't have to spend 6 months learning the area before they can figure out what happened.
But again, why wouldn't you have a totally independent counsel to the Inspector General providing that advice as opposed to, again, I'm concerned because I think we've seen what I would believe would be improper contact between Inspector General's office and the General Counsel of the Department of Homeland Security. I'm highly concerned about that, and I'm trying to figure out what that wall of separation really ought to be to maintain the independence of the Inspector General.
Yeah, I'm obviously not privy to the specifics that are troubling you, and I can certainly imagine situations where the communication would not be appropriate. But just as a broad brush matter, I don't see a problem with having the IG have an opportunity to seek advice from OGC. Otherwise, there's a danger that you'd then have to essentially replicate the expertise of OGC inside the IG to a certain extent, and that might not be efficient. So there's a balance there, as there are many things. But there certainly shouldn't be an effort by OGC to influence the outcome.
That would be a bright line problem. I mean, improper if not illegal.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, the IG is the person who is supposed to find out what the facts are.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bunnell.
Could I just ask a follow-up?